Well, good evening to all, and I hope everyone is doing well. This evening, we're going to begin a new part of our study. Really, it's in a way a continuation of what we've been doing already. Last week, we finished looking at the book of Exodus, and we had the Israelites in Sinai. We had the incident of the golden calf. And then we also looked at the incident recorded in the book of Leviticus concerning the deaths of the two priests, Aaron's sons Nadab and Abihu, who had offered unholy fire to the Lord. And that incident also took place there at Sinai. So the book of Exodus ends at Mount Sinai with the Israelites there at Mount Sinai. But the story doesn't end there. There's a continuation of the journey from Sinai to the Promised Land, and that's what we want to be looking at over the next several weeks. So the story of Israel's journey, which begins in Egypt to the Promised Land of Canaan, the land that God had promised to give to Abraham and his descendants. It begins in the book of Exodus with the people leaving Egypt and arriving at Mount Sinai. And there at Mount Sinai, the covenant with God is established. Israel is identified as the Lord's people, as God's people. The law is given and the tabernacle is built. The story, though, continues on in the book of Numbers, which records the journey from Mount Sinai to the plains of Moab on the eastern side of the River Jordan, overlooking the Promised Land. So the book of Numbers takes us to really to the verge of Israel's entry into the Promised Land. And this covers a period of something like 38 years in which many interesting and instructive incidents take place, as we'll be seeing. The Apostle Paul sees the events of this period as a warning and instruction for the Christians in Corinth, who he's writing to in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 1 to 11. And then by us reading them and applying them, they also provide a lesson for us as well. So just read the passage here, the 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 1 to 11. And Paul is referring to a number of events that take place during this period of Israel's journey from Egypt to the Promised Land. He says, "I want you to know, brethren, that our fathers were all under the cloud and all passed through the sea, and all were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea, and all ate the same supernatural food and all drank the same supernatural drink. For they drank from the supernatural rock which followed them, and the rock was Christ. Nevertheless, with most of them, God was not pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness. Now these things are warnings for us, not to desire evil as they did. Do not be idolaters, as some of them were. As it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to dance. We must not indulge in immorality, as some of them did, and 23,000 fell in a single day. We must not put the Lord to the test, as some of them did, and were destroyed by serpents, nor grumble, as some of them did, and were destroyed by the destroyer. Now these things happened to them as a warning, but they were written down for our instruction, upon whom the end of the ages has come." So Paul, referring to those events from the time of Israel's time in the wilderness, and he says that they were written down for our instruction. So there are things for us to learn from by looking at these events, and that's what we'll be doing as we go through this study. So in the book of Numbers, from chapter 10 through to chapter 17, we have the record of the journey from Sinai, after the Israelites leave Sinai, to a place called Kadesh Barnea. And we'll put a map up in a moment to have a look at that location. But in chapter 10, we're going to begin this evening in Numbers chapter 10 at verse 11. We have a record of their departure from Mount Sinai. And the date of their departure is given here in Numbers chapter 10, verses 11 to 13, which says, "In the second year, in the second month, on the 20th day of the month, the cloud was taken up from over the tabernacle of the testimony, and the people of Israel set out by stages from the wilderness of Sinai, and the cloud settled down in the wilderness of Paran. They set out for the first time at the command of the Lord by Moses." The Israelites have been at Mount Sinai for 11 months. Now, in the second year after they've come out of Egypt, on the 20th day of the second month, the cloud of God's presence was taken up from over the tabernacle. And this was the signal that the people were to begin their journey. In Numbers chapter 9, verses 17 and 18, we're told this concerning the cloud. "And whenever the cloud was taken up from over the tent, after that the people of Israel set out, and in the place where the cloud settled down, there the people of Israel encamped. At the command of the Lord, the people of Israel set out, and at the command of the Lord they encamped." So this cloud then rose, and the signal for the people to begin their journey. And at this stage, the cloud would lead them from the wilderness of Sinai to the wilderness of Paran, which is in the northern Sinai Peninsula. This would be a journey of several days, with several stops being made along the way. And we're told there in chapter 10, verse 13, that they set out for the first time at the command of the Lord by Moses. The book of Deuteronomy in chapter 1, verses 6 to 8 also records their departure at this point. Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 6 says, "The Lord our God said to us in Horeb, 'You have stayed long enough at this mountain. Turn and take your journey and go to the hill country of the Amorites and to all their neighbors in the Arabah, in the hill country and in the lowland and in the Negeb and by the sea coast, the land of the Canaanites and Lebanon as far as the great river Euphrates. Behold, I have set the land before you. Go in and take possession of the land which the Lord swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give to them and to their descendants after them." So Deuteronomy begins there with that instruction for them to set out on this part of their journey. And it is God who is leading them. As the cloud rises, God is the one who is guiding them. So let's look on the map here, and we see the route. No one knows for certain the exact route, but the red line on the map there is the one that's sort of traditionally regarded as the route that the Israelites followed. So it begins over there in Egypt. They head down south. They come to Mount Sinai, where we've been at the end of Exodus, and now they're about to leave Mount Sinai, and they begin heading north. And if you follow that route up to north there, you'll see the wilderness of Paran marked there. And then just above that is Kadesh Barnea, which is where they are heading at this point. This evening, we'll be looking at the stage from Mount Sinai to Hazroth, which you see just a little further north from Mount Sinai there. So that's the direction of travel that the Israelites are heading in at this time. In Numbers chapter 10, from verse 14 to verse 28, we're given a description here of the order of the tribes in which they set out on this journey. And they were to set out in their appointed order in groups of three tribes in each group, and they were led by the tribe of Judah. So verse 14 says, "The standard of the camp of the men of Judah set out first by their companies." And it goes on to give the names of those who were leading at that time, and the names of the other tribes there as well. We won't read through all of this passage here. But in Numbers chapter 2, Numbers chapter 2 records the order of the tribes and how they were arranged when around the tabernacle, and the order in which they were to set up camp, and they follow that order when they're on the march as well, when they go in this procession. A silver trumpet would be blown as the signal to break camp. At the beginning of Numbers chapter 10, verse 1 and 2 says, "The Lord said to Moses, make 2 silver trumpets. Of hammered work you shall make them, and you shall use them for summoning the congregation and for breaking camp." So these trumpets were used as a form of signal, either to bring the people together or as a sign that they were about to set off to break camp and to set off on their journey. The tabernacle would be dismantled, be taken down, and the curtains, the coverings, and the frames were to be carried by the sons of Gershon and the sons of Merari. These are families from the tribe of Levi. So verse 17 of Numbers chapter 10 says this, "And when the tabernacle was taken down, the sons of Gershon and the sons of Merari who carried the tabernacle set out." And again, back in Numbers chapter 4, verses 21 to 33, we're given more detail there about these families and what their responsibilities are. The numbers are being counted here in this census. And verse 21 there says, "Take a census of the sons of Gershon," and verse 24 says, "This is the service of the families of the Gershonites in serving and bearing burdens. They shall carry the curtains of the tabernacle and the tent of meeting with its covering and the covering of goat skin." So the Gershonites are to carry all of the coverings, the curtains. The sons of Merari, mentioned at verse 29 of Numbers 4, they are to carry the framework of the tabernacle. Verse 31 there says, "This is what they are charged to carry as the whole of their service in the tent of meeting: the frames of the tabernacle with its bars, pillars, and bases, and the pillars of the court round about with their bases, pegs, and cords, with all their equipment and all their accessories." So these are the things that the Gershonites and the Merarites were to carry as they march. The Kohathites, who were the priestly family, this is Aaron and his sons, they're from the family of Kohath, again from the tribe of Levi. They are responsible for carrying the holy things. Back in Numbers chapter 10 and verse 21 here says, "Then the Kohathites set out carrying the holy things, and the tabernacle was set up before their arrival." Again, back in chapter 4 of Numbers, in verses 1 to 20, that gives more detail about the Kohathites and the things that they were to carry. And these were the furniture items used in the tabernacle for the service, like the table for the showbread, the lampstand, the altar of incense, the bronze altar, and the laver. So they would be carrying those things. The Ark of the Covenant itself was probably in front of the procession, leading the whole procession. And the way the order of the march here would mean that the tabernacle could be set up before the Kohathites arrived with the holy items which were to go into the tabernacle. As verse 21 says there, that the tabernacle was set up before their arrival. So it would all be in place, and then the Kohathites would bring the items which were to go into the tabernacle there. So that describes for us the order, how the tribes would have been marching, the order of the tribes, and how everything was arranged for the journey. We come to an incident here in verses 29 to 32, Numbers chapter 10, concerning a character named Hobab. Moses said to Hobab, the son of Reuel, the Midianite, Moses' father-in-law, "We're setting out for the place of which the Lord said, 'I will give it to you.' Come with us, and we will do you good, for the Lord has promised good to Israel." But he said to him, "I will not go. I will depart to my own land and to my kindred." And he said, "Do not leave us, I pray you, for you know how we are to encamp in the wilderness, and you will serve as eyes for us. And if you go with us, whatever good the Lord will do to us, the same will we do to you." So here Moses appealed to his brother-in-law Hobab. That's the son of Moses' father-in-law. Uh, Moses' father-in-law is named Reuel here. In other places, he's named Jethro. He's described as being a Midianite. So Moses appeals to Hobab to accompany them on their journey, and he promised, "We will do you good, for the Lord has promised good to Israel." However, Hobab said that he wouldn't go, but rather he would return to his own land and his own people. So Moses made a second appeal, because Moses realized it would be useful to have Hobab with them because he knows the region, and Moses says, "You will serve as eyes for us." So he would be able to show them perhaps where to find water, and perhaps offer other sort of practical advice for living in the wilderness there. And then Moses repeats the promise again in verse 32, "And if you go with us, whatever good the Lord will do to us, the same we will do to you." So Moses is saying, God is going to do us good, and by you coming with us, you'll be able to share in those good things that the Lord is going to do for us. Hobab's response is not recorded here. We don't learn whether he did go with them, but in the book of Judges, Judges chapter 1, verse 16, that would seem to suggest that he did go with them. Uh, Judges chapter 1, verse 16 is describing the conquest of the land, when the Israelites go into the land and conquer the land. And verse 16 says, "And the descendants of the Kenite, Moses' father-in-law, went up with the people of Judah from the city of palms into the wilderness of Judah, which lies in the Negev." So the verse there is telling us that the descendants of Moses' father-in-law, who would have been this Hobab and others, they went with the people from Judah when they occupied their territory in the land that God had promised. So it seems that Hobab or his family did accompany the Israelites. Well, verse 33 to 36 then speaks of the setting out, really. So they set out from the mount of the Lord 3 days' journey, and the ark of the covenant of the Lord went before them 3 days' journey to seek out a resting place for them. And the cloud of the Lord was over them by day whenever they set out from the camp. And whenever the ark set out, Moses said, "Arise, O Lord, and let thy enemies be scattered, and let them that hate thee flee before thee." And when it rested, he said, "Return, O Lord, to the 10,000 thousands of Israel." So the first stage of the journey then took 3 days, we're told there in verse 33. And the ark of the covenant went before them, seeking out a resting place, and the cloud of the Lord was over them as they travelled. And Moses, it seemed, adopted a sort of regular pattern that whenever the ark set out, and when it came to rest, that when it set out, he would cry, "Arise, O Lord, and let thy enemies be scattered, and let them that hate thee flee before thee." And Psalm 68 and verse 1 begins in much the same way as these words of Moses. Psalm 68 verse 1 begins, "Let God arise, let his enemies be scattered, let those who hate him flee before him." And then when the ark rested, when they came to the place where they were going to stop, Moses again would cry out, "Return, O Lord, to the 10,000 thousands of Israel," as if the Lord has come back to the people there. Again, in the Psalms, there's a similar statement in Psalm 132 and verse 8. Psalm 132, verse 8. Arise, O Lord, and go to thy resting place, thou and the ark of thy might. So Moses' words there, these words that he cries out when the ark goes out and when it returns, are really an expression of his faith and his confidence in God, that God is pictured here as a warrior who is going out to defeat his enemies and who returns victorious. So God is this warrior and this defender of Israel. Well, in chapter 11, we have the record of a couple of incidents that occur on this first stage of the journey when they leave Sinai. So chapter 11, verse 1 to 3 says this, and the people complained in the hearing of the Lord about their misfortunes. And when the Lord heard it, his anger was kindled, and the fire of the Lord burned among them and consumed some outlying parts of the camp. Then the people cried to Moses, and Moses prayed to the Lord, and the fire abated. So the name of that place was called Taberah, because the fire of the Lord burned among them. So soon after the journey began, the people are already complaining and showing their ingratitude and their faithlessness. And this is happening so soon after the incident with the golden calf there at Sinai. Perhaps they had become comfortable with the settled life at Sinai over the past 11 months, but now they're on the move again and things are getting harder and the environment is harsh and inhospitable. And verse 1 there says they complained in the hearing of the Lord about their misfortunes. Exactly what their complaints were is not specified here. But the Lord heard their complaints and expressed his anger with the people by sending fire, fire which burnt up or destroyed some outlying parts of the camp. No mention is made of the fire killing anyone, but the people must have realized that they were in danger, and they cried to Moses, who then interceded for them by praying to the Lord, and the fire stopped, the fire abated. And this led to Moses naming the place Taberah, which is a word which means burning. Because of the explanation is given there in verse 3, because the fire of the Lord burned among them. So the name is given because of what happened there. That name Taberah is used in the book of Deuteronomy, which recalls this event, along with other events. Deuteronomy chapter 9, verse 22. At Taberah also, and at Massa, and at Kibroth Hattaavah, you provoked the Lord to wrath. So just a mention there of Taberah, along with some other places where the people had provoked the Lord to wrath. Well, we have another incident now in the rest of chapter 11, which is the people's craving for meat. Chapter 11, verses 4 to 9 begins, now the rabble that was among them had a strong craving, and the people of Israel also wept again and said, oh, that we had meat to eat. We remember the fish we ate in Egypt for nothing, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. But now our strength is dried up, and there is nothing at all but this manna to look at. Now the manna was like coriander seed, and its appearance like that of bdellium. The people went about and gathered it, ground it in mills, or beat it in mortars, and boiled it in pots, and made cakes of it. And the taste of it was like the taste of cakes baked with oil. When the dew fell upon the camp in the night, the manna fell with it. Mention is made there in verse 4 of the rabble. Now the rabble that was among them. This would seem to be the non-Israelites who had come out of Egypt along with the Israelites. In Exodus chapter 12 and verse 38, they're described as being a mixed multitude. So these people weren't Israelites. But they had associated themselves with the Israelites when they left Egypt. But these people, described as being the rabble, but also the Israelites as well, expressed their strong desire for meat, and they're weeping about it. So instead of looking forward to what the land of Canaan had to offer, they looked back nostalgically to the variety of foods that they had eaten and enjoyed in Egypt. And they list them all there, the fish, cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, garlic. Looking fondly back to those things. And they complain that their strength has gone, their strength is dried up, and all they have to eat is this manna. They've been eating it for about a year, and they've become bored with it, eating the same food every day. The way in which the people prepared the manna is described there in verse 7 and verse 7 to 9, and its appearance described there as well. So it's an indication of the people's ingratitude towards God and the provision that God has made here. Well, Moses heard the people weeping, and he he responds to this here. And this is chapter 11, verses 10 to 15, which says, Moses heard the people weeping throughout their families, every man at the door of his tent, and the anger of the Lord blazed hotly, and Moses was displeased. Moses said to the Lord, why hast thou dealt ill with thy servant, and why have I not found favour in thy sight, that thou dost lay the burden of all this people upon me? Did I conceive all this people? Did I bring them forth? Thou shouldst say to me, carry them in your bosom as a nurse carries the sucking child to the land which thou didst swear to give their fathers. Where am I to get meat to give to all this people? For they weep before me and say, give us meat that we may eat. I am not able to carry all this people alone. The burden is too heavy for me. If thou wilt deal thus with me, kill me at once, if I find favour in thy sight, that I may not see my wretchedness. So Moses heard the people weeping at the doors of their tents and heard their demands for meat. The Lord has heard as well, and his anger blazed hotly, we're told, and Moses himself was displeased with the whole situation. And so he prayed to the Lord, and he complained that the burden of looking after the people is too much for him. Why has God put this burden upon him? Moses sees himself here as a nurse who's caring for a young child. These people are behaving like children, and Moses is having to nurse them. But they're God's people. So why has God given Moses this responsibility? And now they're asking for meat as well. So how is he expected to provide meat for all these people? And he says in verse 14, I am not able to carry all this people alone. The burden is too heavy for me. Things have become too much for Moses. And if this is how God is treating him, then Moses asks that God should kill him at once. And if that happened, then God would be doing Moses a favor. If Moses has found favor in his sight, then this is what God would do. He says that I might not see my wretchedness. So we see here Moses' anger and his frustration at the situation which he is expressing in this prayer to God, that things have become too much for him, and he can't cope with this anymore. Well, God responds in answer to Moses' prayer from verse 16 down to verse 30 here. So God's answer to Moses' prayer is to appoint 70 elders who will assist Moses. Verse 16 says, And the Lord said to Moses, Gather for me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom you know to be the elders of the people and officers over them, and bring them to the tent of meeting, and let them take their stand there with you. And I will come down and talk with you there, and I will take some of the Spirit which is upon you, and put it upon them, and they shall bear the burden of the people with you, that you may not bear it yourself alone. Moses is to gather 70 elders of the people and bring them to the tent of meeting, to the tabernacle. We've already come across 70 elders earlier in Exodus chapter 24. In verse 1 and verse 9, there were 70 elders there who went with Moses up the mountain. Whether these are the same 70 or not is unclear. But with these 70, God will now take some of the Spirit that is upon Moses, and he will put it upon the 70 elders. He says in verse 17, They shall bear the burden of the people with you, that you may not bear it yourself alone. So God is going to help Moses and provide 70 others who will be able to help him bear the burden. It won't all be down upon him. God also addresses here the people's demand for meat. Verses 18 to 20, God goes on to say, And say to the people, Consecrate yourselves for tomorrow, and you shall eat meat. For you have wept in the hearing of the Lord, saying, Who will give us meat to eat? For it was well with us in Egypt. Therefore the Lord will give you meat, and you shall eat. You shall not eat 1 day, or 2 days, or 5 days, or 10 days, or 20 days, but a whole month, until it comes out at your nostrils, and becomes loathsome to you, because you have rejected the Lord who is among you, and have wept before him, saying, Why did we come forth out of Egypt? So the people are to consecrate themselves for the following day, when God will provide meat for them to eat. But it won't be just for 1 day, or 2 days, or 5 days, or 10 days, or 20 days, but it will be for a whole month. And they will have so much meat that it will be coming out of their nostrils, and it will become detestable to them. So there'll be so much meat that they become sick of it. And the reason why God will provide them with so much meat to the point where they will loathe it is, he says, because you have rejected the Lord who is among you, and have wept before him, saying, Why did we come forth out of Egypt? They're questioning God's plan and God's purpose. Why did we even have to come out of Egypt? So the blessing of the meat, the thing that they desired, the thing that they wanted, is now going to become a curse for them, or a judgment upon them. Well, Moses is astounded by this, as we read on here in verse 21 to 23. But Moses said, The people among whom I am number 600,000 on foot, and thou hast said, I will give them meat, that they may eat a whole month. Shall flocks and herds be slaughtered for them to suffice them, or shall all the fish of the sea be gathered together for them to suffice them? And the Lord said to Moses, Is the Lord's hand shortened? Now you shall see whether my word will come true for you or not. So Moses questioned God, but where is all this meat going to come from? There's 600,000 people here, and you're saying you're going to provide meat for them for a month. Where's it going to come from? Do we have to slaughter all of our flocks and herds? Are we going to get all the fish from the sea? And the Lord then answers Moses, Is the Lord's hand shortened? Now you shall see whether my word will come true for you or not. So is Moses doubting God here? Is God incapable of doing such a thing? But in effect, Moses is told, well, just wait and see. Wait and see what's going to happen, whether this will come true or not. So verse 24 to 30 goes on then. So Moses went out and told the people the words of the Lord, and he gathered 70 men of the elders of the people and placed them round about the tent. Then the Lord came down in the cloud and spoke to him, and took some of the Spirit that was upon him and put it upon the 70 elders. And when the Spirit rested upon them, they prophesied, but they did so no more. Now 2 men remained in the camp, one named Eldad and the other named Medad, and the Spirit rested upon them. They were among those registered, but they had not gone out to the tent, and so they prophesied in the camp. And a young man ran and told Moses, Eldad and Medad are prophesying in the camp. And Joshua the son of Nun, the minister of Moses, one of the chosen men, said, My lord Moses, forbid them. But Moses said to them, Are you jealous for my sake? Would that all the Lord's people were prophets, that the Lord would put his Spirit upon them. And Moses and the elders of Israel returned to the camp. So Moses goes to the people, he tells them what the Lord has said, and he gathers these 70 elders at the tent, the tabernacle. And the Lord came down in the cloud again and spoke to Moses. And then some of the Spirit that was upon Moses is transferred and put upon the 70 elders, and in response they begin to prophesy. Their prophesying here seemed to be a one-off occasion, just a temporary measure, as we're told there in verse 25, but they did so no more. So the initial prophesying here would be a sign of God's approval of these 70 elders. It would signal God's approval of them, that the Spirit had gone from Moses to these 70 as well. But there were 2 of the elders named Eldad and Medad who hadn't gone to the tent. They remained in the camp. But the Spirit still rested upon them, and they were prophesying in the camp. So witnessing this, a young man then ran and told Moses what was going on. And Joshua, Moses' servant, heard this, and he wanted Moses to forbid them from prophesying in the camp. But Moses would not do so. Moses was not motivated by any sense of self-importance or personal glory. Joshua seemed to think that these men shouldn't be doing it there in the camp. That perhaps thought they're in the wrong place. They should be here, so they shouldn't be doing this. But Moses wasn't bothered by that. He's not concerned about himself, and so he asks Joshua, "Are you jealous for my sake?" And instead he said, Would that all the Lord's people were prophets, that the Lord would put his Spirit upon them. So Moses desired, this isn't some gift that Moses feels he has to cling on to, but he wishes that everyone would have this gift of prophecy, that the Lord would put his Spirit upon all of the people. So Moses and the elders then returned to the camp after this incident. Well, we come to verse 31 to 35 now, the conclusion of the chapter, and the conclusion of the story here, the provision of the meat that the people have been asking for. And there went forth a wind from the Lord, and it brought quails from the sea, and let them fall beside the camp, about a day's journey on this side, and a day's journey on the other side, round about the camp, and about 2 cubits above the face of the earth. And the people rose all that day and all night and all the next day, and gathered the quails. He who gathered least gathered 10 homers, and they spread them out for themselves all round the camp. While the meat was yet between their teeth, before it was consumed, the anger of the Lord was kindled against the people, and the Lord smote the people with a very great plague. Therefore the name of that place was called Kibroth Hattaavah, because there they buried the people who had the craving. From Kibroth Hattaavah the people journeyed to Hazroth, and they remained at Hazroth. So God now sent a wind, which brought a vast number of quails from the direction of the sea. Earlier, soon after the Israelites had left Egypt and had complained then about the lack of food, God had made a one-time provision of quail for them. That was in Exodus chapter 16. And now God repeats that provision here. Quails are a small bird, about 6 or 7 inches long, and they migrate from Africa to Europe in March or April time of the year, and they would cross the Sinai Peninsula. And people, inhabitants of that area would set traps. They would catch them and eat them for food. So the migration of the quail is a sort of natural occurring event. But here the quail fell around the camp. Um, Quail, having been on that flight, would be getting tired and would perhaps drop to the ground to rest. And here they fall around the camp to a distance of a day's journey on either side and to a depth of 2 cubits. 2 cubits is about 3 feet, so it's a great depth, really. So the miracle here is not the appearance of the quail, that's a natural thing, but the miracle here is in the timing of their arrival and also in their abundant number that God ensures happens here. So the people then spent all day and all night and all of the next day going around collecting the quail, which they then spread around the camp. And the ones who gathered the least amount were gathering, we're told, 10 homers. And that's a large number. It's difficult to know the exact equivalent today, but 1 homer is defined as a donkey load, sort of load that you would put on a donkey. So they're collected. This is the people who are gathering the least amount, gathering 10 donkey loads of quail. In an equivalent measure of our own, it's estimated something like 220 litres or 48 gallons is 1 homer. So 10 times that. It's a vast amount, more than anyone would need for themselves or their family. And whilst the people were eating and the food was still in their mouths, we're told between their teeth, so they're chewing on it, the Lord's anger was kindled, and he struck them, we're told, with a very great plague, and it caused the death of some. We're not told how many died, but some died. And the place where this happened then was given this name, Kibroth Hattava. Again, the explanation of the name is there in verse 34, because there they buried the people who had the craving. Kibroth Hattava means graves of craving. So again, it's a name given to a place because of something that happened happened at Tabara earlier. The incident is mentioned in Psalm 78, verses 17 to 31, which is really giving a summary of a number of incidents of unfaithfulness and rebellion of the Israelites here. So Psalm 78 from verse 17 says, yet they sinned still more against him, rebelling against the Most High in the desert. They tested God in their heart by demanding the food they craved. They spoke against God, saying, can God spread a table in the wilderness? He smote the rock so that water gushed out and streams overflowed. Can he also give bread or provide meat for his people? Therefore, when the Lord heard, he was full of wrath. A fire was kindled against Jacob. His anger mounted against Israel, because they had no faith in God and did not trust in his saving power. Yet he commanded the skies above and opened the doors of heaven, and he rained down upon them manna to eat and gave them the grain of heaven. Man ate of the bread of the angels. He sent them food in abundance. He caused the east wind to blow in the heavens, and by his power he led out the south wind. He rained flesh upon them like dust, winged birds like the sand of the seas. He let them fall in the midst of their camp, all around their habitations. And they ate and were well filled, for he gave them what they craved. But before they had sated their craving, while the food was still in their mouths, the anger of the Lord rose against them, and he slew the strongest of them, and laid low the picked men of Israel. The psalmist then is telling the story there of what happened, and it shows that these things happened, he says there, because they had no faith in God, and they did not trust his saving power. So lack of faith on their part. So just to go back to the map here, and we see Mount Sinai there, and we've come up to Hazroth, verse 35 of the chapter. The last verse of the chapter says, "From Kibroth Hatava the people journeyed to Hazroth, and they remained at Hazroth." So this is where we are now at the end of the chapter. We've come up as far as Hazroth there, where they stay for a while. So the incidents we've looked at here this evening really once again show us the faithlessness of the people, their lack of faith and their lack of trust in God, and their ingratitude at the provision that God is making for them, that their sights are set on going back to Egypt, and they think that things were good there. And rather than looking forward and trusting in God and heading towards the land that God has promised to give them. We've also seen in this chapter the burden of leadership that lay upon Moses, and the personal struggle that he faced in trying to lead these people, and that it had all become a bit too much for him. The writer to the Hebrews in Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 17 speaks of leadership here as well. He says, "Obey your leaders and submit to them, for they are keeping watch over your souls as men who will have to give account. Let them do this joyfully and not sadly, for that would be of no advantage to you." Well, for Moses, leadership wasn't a joyful thing for him, not at this point anyway, and the difficulties that he had to deal with there. But again, we see God's gracious provision in providing Moses with the help that he needed, providing the 70 elders who were given that measure of the Spirit as well to aid them in assisting Moses in caring for these people. So we'll stop here for this evening and continue with the journey next week.